What's holding most nation states back from adopting Bitcoin?
A group of small individuals who own a load of the world's wealth, who will meet together to try and act in their own best interest. That's what's holding back adoption for countries to make the decision to say, yeah, let's make it our legal currency. But I don't think that's really a problem for Bitcoin.
It's basically just a matter of time till people and nation states and institutions and everybody involved figures out what Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin can help on an individual level, on a nation state level.
I think you'll start to see some nation states making moves.
How long can this fiat system still survive?
Can this debt ever be paid off? No, it won't be paid off. So there has to be some bubble that will pop.
When can we see a 100K US dollar Bitcoin price? Before we get really into like the Bitcoin nation state adoption, hyper Bitcoinization, what are you doing at the Chain Free organization and in Serbia? I always like to start with your journey. Like, how did you discover Bitcoin? How did you had a shitcoin, altcoin phase in your journey? What is your motivation to be so engaged in the Bitcoin community?
So yes, my first ever instance of discussing Bitcoin was actually back in 2012. And that was easily dismissed as magical internet money, the typical dismissal. I was discussing with some friends. I forgot exactly who it was, but we were talking about, oh yeah, look at Bitcoin. It's going up to, could it be going up to $100 or something? What is this stuff? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, okay, fine. And then another conversation. And it was always there in the background, Bitcoin, it just didn't really show up hard on my radar. I had no idea what it was or what it could do or what it was capable of. Completely dismissed it. Then 2017 happened, and I was on Bitcoin Reddit actually, and I saw that Bitcoin, the subreddit was kept on posting that one meme of the guy of the person, that little character on the roller coaster, and he's keep on going up, and he's like, hands in the air going woohoo, going up, and I was like, that's interesting. What's going on there? Then I see this a couple of times. I guess this is at the end of 2016, beginning 2017. Then I get a phone call from my best friend, and he's like, "Hey Philip, do you know about Bitcoin?" I was like, "Well, yeah, but what's up?" He was like, "You should buy some." I was like, "Why?" Well, it's a great hedge against inflation, and there's only going to be 21 million, and that was as far as my knowledge was of Bitcoin. It was all, and it's just a good investment. It could be the new future of money and stuff. All right, fine, show me. So he showed me. He got me into Coinbase accounts. I bought some. He told me to put into a wallet, which was very nice of him. But then I was asking him, so what's Ethereum and Litecoin? Because that's what they were selling also on Coinbase at the time, just those three. And I bought some of that shit as well. And I say some of that shit. I'm saying that Bitcoin is not shit. I'm saying I bought those shitcoins thinking that they also stood a chance of having a future. And yeah, I guess I was distracted by shitcoinery. My friend also got me involved in the ICO craze, the initial coin offering phrase. That was a big thing in the 2017. You saw so many people coming up with projects, all these white papers, all these brilliantly, yeah, they're brilliant scams of people coming up with really well written 2 or 3 pages of something like how that coin is going to save the world, as how it's gonna save dolphins from I don't know, from the oceans and from humans, and it's not gonna boil this, we're gonna have the new fastest transacting coin, and it's gonna fix that vulnerability, it's gonna fix that security issue, it's gonna create this speed and all that. So I was like, wow, look at all these amazing projects, look at all these smart people. And they have these initial coin offerings. You can get in there early. You can probably get the next Bitcoin. And it's always about the next Bitcoin. So I probably wasted, I wouldn't say loads of my money back then, but I was buying $100 here, $100 there for these ICO tokens, hoping that they would take off. None of them took off. So I learned the hard way. there, and I realized that ICOs were a load of shit, and that only just solidified my understanding that Bitcoin was the king. And I remember back in 2017, we created a group on WhatsApp with some friends. We got more friends involved in it. And I remember Bitcoin was always referred to as the king. Oh, the king moves. When the king moves, everything else moves and stuff. So it's all about Bitcoin. But everyone's always getting caught up about other shit coins as well. So we were all, I said, my group of friends were distracted by a lot of the shit coinery. Then it wasn't until 2020. Okay, sorry. The bear market in 2018 happened. I was always very heavy on holding Bitcoin. I think I had like 80% of my portfolio, 90% in Bitcoin, and the rest was Litecoin and Ethereum. Because I thought that they could stand a chance. I thought, hey, if they're on Coinbase, they mean something. But I also saw that their holdings got gradually worse and worse as the bear market happened, and Bitcoin just stayed there doing its thing and just didn't. It lost its price in fiat, but it was there. It was doing its thing, and I didn't really study further. I did not study further much into Bitcoin at all. I was distracted by my personal life. I had just got married. My son was just born in the beginning of 2018. But all the while, whenever I got a paycheck or whenever I would DCA or smash buy whenever I had some cash lying around, only into Bitcoin. Then comes 2020 with the pandemic, and that's when my eyes started to really open up. I saw that, having not been fully aware of what the reasons why and what actually happened during the 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009 financial crisis, or what was the cause of that. I had my theories, I had my ideas. I was working in traditional finance, in asset management. I thought I knew why it was the case. But one thing is, you don't question the money. You don't actually question monetary theory. You don't question what is money. And this is what I started questioning in 2000. And that is what led me to joining my Bitcoin, my Twitter account that was dormant since like 2010. I had some dormant Twitter account. I joined on there. I started following some Bitcoiners, but also some crypto guys. Realized that the crypto accounts were all cringe, and they didn't really make much sense, and they felt like a whole bunch of charlatans and scammers. But the Bitcoin maxis were making a lot of sense. Not only were there was intelligent discourse and some really great analysis and talk, and an education from the likes of Safety, Gigi, Bitstein, and those people, and then Seyr came to the scene as well. But there's some fantastic memes and humor and great shit posting that was happening, and I thought that this is fantastic, and I really it got to me. It got to me. I was orange pilled. I wouldn't say it was an overnight process, but it happened. It happened sort of gradually over 2000 into 2021 when I sold all the shit coins I had, which was not much, and just was like, yeah, I'm a maxi now. The worst. There's no second best, as per Seyr, really.
Yeah,
so that's yeah.
Yeah, this area was amazing. I think when you go back to like 2017 to 2018, around that time, and search for Bitcoin only content, it was quite hard to find. I think I just came in 2020, so I don't know, but this is what I hear a lot. And now if you search for Bitcoin only content, there are like so many podcasts, there are so many good written pieces, there are blogs out there, there are Twitter accounts that only post about Bitcoin.
It's amazing that there was not much before, and I didn't. If only I'd come across, for example, the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, who started by Pierre Rochard and Bitstein. And sorry if I'm not mentioning somebody else, but I became close recently to Bitstein, Michael Goldstein, and their content was way ahead of its time. They had the content, but then a lot of people repurposed what they wrote. Obviously, they made into some. I guess they I wouldn't say repurposed it, recycled it a little bit just to get more reach out there. But there were a lot of good pioneers in the space, early pioneers in 2011, 12, who really understood what the implications of what Bitcoin was. But that was hard to find. It would have been very difficult to find the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute back even in 2017. But I think 2020, 2021, that's when the eruption of Bitcoin podcast material, and then how I got my hands on the copy of the Bitcoin Standard was in late 2020. I know it was written in 2018, and I know it was rewritten. And then the forward was rewritten because of the Nasib Taleb forward. And I know that Seyr and him have had a bit of a falling out for obvious reasons. But I'm glad that I got the copy that has Seyr's forward.
Yeah.
I read that book, and that was like, wow, that was a big, heavy read. That was a groundbreaking read. It didn't take me. I mean, it took me a while. I was reading that book like every night for a couple of months. It took me a while to get through it properly. I really wanted to not just read it, but study it, and that was also part of the big clincher of becoming orange pilled.
Yeah, this book I also read, like it was also my first Bitcoin book, and I also remember it took me, I think, 1.5 months or something like that, and I was also reading it almost every day. And sometimes I just went back like 10 pages and reread the whole 10 pages, because I was like, this does not make 100% sense. I have to go back and read it again, and then oh, this is what it makes sense. Like,
yes,
it's hard to
exactly.
understand the whole concept at the first minute.
But that's what Bitcoin is. It really changes you. You look at the world as it should be. The world that we've been brought up to, indoctrinated in these days, has given us a warped vision, warped view of the world, and it's done that on purpose. And Bitcoin recalibrates your vision, your sight, and makes you see the world for what it is. And we understand that money is it's the most fundamental property that we have for transaction, for communication, for information. And that has been completely corrupted for hundreds of years. I mean, I say hundreds of years, since the birth of proper central banking, from the days of Jekyll Island. But there was also there was a lot of central banking type behavior and deflation and debasement of currencies happening many years before, millennia before the king of debasements happened, which was the creation of Federal Reserve and all the other central banks that were the result of that. So yeah, it's having to break through that education of yours is not easy, and I'm going to understand. We have to sympathize that a lot of people, they're going to find it very difficult to be able to see the world the way we see it now. And maybe I might be sounding like a like what you call it, like I forgot the word. Sorry, I've got to put on pause. But what's the word when you have a group of people, fanatics?
A conspiracy theorist? Are you searching for
Oh
that?
no, I've been labeled that all the time. That's normal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a badge of honor. What's the other one? Doesn't matter. We can continue.
The crazy
Anyway,
people. Okay.
no, crazy people like the. Sorry, I should drink more coffee.
It's okay. It's interesting because I mean, you're well known all over the world, but especially also I think in Serbia, as you are in the royal family, as you are as you are the Prince Philip of Serbia. How is the Bitcoin adoption going there, and how do people, and especially outside of Bitcoin, react to that?
Well, I mean, the Serbian royal family, which was actually last when it was functioning, was Yugoslav royal family. Yes, it
Yeah.
was created as a Serbian royal family, but it was abolished 1945 as under the state of Yugoslavia. We won't get into the nitty gritty details of that, but my father was born in 1945 in exile in London, and he married in 1972. Married my mother, Princess Maria de Gloria Orleans de Braganza, Brazilian princess, who's also the heir. Heir. She's a descendant of the last emperors of Brazil, the two only emperors of Brazil. One of them, which was Pedro II, who was the one who paved the way for the liberation of slaves in Brazil. And on my father's side, it's the Karađorđević dynasty, which is a Serbian dynasty. Karađorđe, who is my great ×4 grandfather, he was the affluent pig farmer turned general who rose up and led the first uprising against the Ottoman Empire, against us, Ottoman oppression. And so I'm quite proud to say that I come from two lineages of freedom fighters. And this is something that maybe I want to continue and I want to emulate, and it's something I'm very proud of. And maybe we can get onto the topic of monarchy later on. But yeah, moving to Serbia recently, my father moved to Serbia in 2001, shortly after Milosevic was ousted, and he and his wife have been living ever since in the palace in Belgrade. There's two palaces in the same compound, and they have tried to do their work to try and promote the royal family. My stepmother and my father doing a lot of charity work, but myself and my older brother, my twin brother, have always kept separate from this because my parents were divorced at an early age. So, family problems. We didn't want to get involved with having to deal with my father and stepmother relations. We were closer to my mother, still close to my father, but it wasn't until actually I married my wife in 2017 and had our son in 2018 that I actually properly got reestablished back with my Serbian roots. And this was part of also along the same time as my Bitcoin journey, what really opened my eyes up to what it is being a Serb and being an Orthodox Christian. And it tied in actually quite well with the idea, with the philosophy, with the ideology of individual sovereignty, and also being a Bitcoin maximalist. Both, discovering Bitcoin has a spiritual sort of awakening, and the same idea was also happening to me when I was rediscovering myself as a Serb. And so when I moved to Serbia during the pandemic, and I moved in June 2020, with my wife, we decided to be a voice for people. We had a platform, social media platform, and we wanted to voice the concern of a lot of our people, and to show that we care. We want the royal family to get back to maybe to a position of having that, not influence, but a lot of people in Serbia and within the region have a lot of respect for the Karađorđević family, but at the same time, a lot of that respect was also eroded away thanks to the socialists or communists during the years through propaganda. But still, there's a lot of Serbs, a lot of very proud Serbs who would love for the monarchy to be reestablished. And it's not that it's my duty to be the one to reestablish the monarchy. My duty is to hopefully lay the groundwork for it to happen in one day in the future. I have an issue that I don't speak Serbian fluently. I only started learning properly in the last 3 years since I moved here, and I'll be honest, it's a very tough language. But I'm doing what I can. My wife is Serbian. My son is speaking Serbian like a Serb, because his mother speaks to him in Serbian. He goes to Serbian school here. He's only 5.5 years old. And then my daughter, who just recently was born in November the 5th, 2023, she'll be Serb. We're living in Belgrade, and I am changing what the Karađorđević didn't have, and that is the ability to live and being brought up in Serbia after so many years of exile. So already that is trying to lay the foundations for integration back of the Karađorđević dynasty into Serbian culture, into Serbian identity. And this is something that we've been, some people insult us, and it's easy, cheap digs at the family is that we don't speak Serbian, that we might be British spies, MI6, we might be KGB, we might be this and that. Yeah, I understand that because we're foreign. Look at me, I sound like a British. My background is that I've been living in the UK most of my life, and that's my accent. Although my accent, I wouldn't call it very 100% British, and maybe somewhere a little bit more American in there as well. But yeah, I understand a lot that there's a lot of work that needs to be done for the identity to be restored for the British. I mean, for the Serbian royal family, and just like the Bitcoiner that I am, I understand about the actions of long-term planning, long-term thinking. So I've really had to lower my time preference and build a family, which is something that I find very important these days, because Serbia is going through a demographical nightmare, like most countries in the West that have employed sort of liberal style policies. And its reproduction rate is only down at about 1.421. That means it's a dying nation. That means in 40, 30 years, we won't have, in 50 years, we won't have the Serbia that we have today. And this is the case for many other nations out there who have lost their ways who have gone down that neoliberal route and lost their family value, their ways of strong identity of family values. Serbia still has that, but I believe the population in the cities have gone a little bit astray with liberalism. And I would love for Serbia to regain its position as like it was back in the 1920s and 1930s before the Second World War, as a very, I would say, powerful but independent and rich asset building nation that was backed by gold backed money, but it was fiat backed by gold. And I have plans for it to be backed by Bitcoin, but that's another project down the line. And I guess I'm rambling on over here, but what I'm trying to say is that the reason I moved back to Serbia is because I wanted to get in touch back with my Serbian roots, but it was also I wanted to lay the groundwork for my children and their children and their children's children, and to start something new from there, and for the dynasty to be rejuvenated and reinstated in the way it should be, and not from a foreign style introduction, but more from a bottom-up groundwork, grassroots strategy approach. Because I don't live in the palace. I live downtown with my wife, and our children go to my son goes to school downtown as well, and I go to the market. We travel the country. I don't have security. I'm not part of any details here and there. So what I'm trying to do is something that is has some risks, but I think potentially in the long run could have some payoffs for Serbia and its status as a freedom loving, sovereign, individual sovereign country.
It's amazing the connection between like traditional values, family, religion, how
Yes.
Bitcoin actually, like I talk with a lot of Bitcoiners. You're now my 35th guest, and most of them that I interview have traditional values. Most of them are family fathers or want to build a family, depending on how old they are. They have a strong connection usually with God and religion. They have different religions, but they all have a religious background. They believe in something. And the connection between that and Bitcoin is so fascinating because Bitcoin is such a young thing. It's like such a new modern thing that could be like really liberal, but it's so connected to those traditional values, to those family values and religion.
But I think at the same time, Bitcoin can be liberal. I think Bitcoin can appease to anybody. And if you want to be liberal, if you want to be independent, if you don't want to create family, if you don't, but still adhere to a monetary network that's incorruptible, and that promotes freedom and individual property rights, then so be it. You can do what you want, really. I guess that's the libertarian mindset. But I think it tends to that if you are in that mindset already, that you will tend to err on the family side of things and tradition, culture, as you said, religion, and having better relationships with your community and with God, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the end of the day, Bitcoin is just money. Like it's apolitical. It has no values. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's no founder that says, "Oh, you have to vote for this and stuff," and this is the best kind of state. Like there's no voice to it. Like there are so many voice to it, but there's no voice to it. If you understand what I mean. And it's just money in the end of the day. But we see what Bitcoin can do with people and can also do with states. Like I mean, in kind of sense, maybe for Serbia, maybe for other nations, is like El Salvador, maybe a role model for the nation state adoption, or how do you see that topic?
I've always used Salvador as a role model. I think the Salvadorian project is still very young, but it's showing great results. And I was there I say last year, now it's 2 years ago, November 2022. And given that I speak Spanish, I was actually speaking to some locals, and they were all very happy with Bukele. I wasn't talking about his Bitcoin policy necessarily, but about the other things that he's done, and about cracking down on crime, especially,
Mm.
and the gangs, and the positivity, the energy I got back from people was fantastic. People were like, I travel around Latin America. I've traveled around in Latin America before, and Latin American peoples always have a very positive nature, mood, nature, and they're very happy people. But I just found that what was happening in El Salvador, they just had an extra gleam in their smile or something. It was fantastic. I was really, really taken back by it, and how what it means to them that 5-6 years ago they were, or maybe a little bit more, they were the capital, the murder capital. San Salvador, the city, was one of the murder capitals of the world. And if you said that in 2015, that in 6-7 years from then, it would be one of the safer cities of the world in Latin America, you'd be like, yeah, you're crazy. But no, but they did it. He did it because Bukele was incorruptible, and it took a Bukele type character to do that. But he understood what Bitcoin means, and he understood what was needed, and he only just enacted a law that was already in place in Parliament. He just turned it into an emergency act and managed to round up all those gang members. Yes, some innocent peoples got caught up in the process, but that there are processes for them to be taken out. But in general, the payoff has been fantastic. That now GDP has gone up. I can't give you any figures, but tourism, as a result of tourism, has gone up. Trade, I'm sure, has gone up as well. You know, it's one of the biggest, better known coffee producers of the world. I tried some fantastic coffees there. I even picked some coffees there with Samson Mao. When we were hosted by Edward Rivas, who's our director of marketing. He's Salvadorian, and he has a very good coffee plantation in one of the volcanoes, and it overlooks one of the lakes. It's beautiful. And Samson and I, you know, this was during the bear market where we had to work for our living, and we started picking coffee beans. No, but yeah, the El Salvador example is something that I use when I talk to people as well. But I also use some other examples as well, and one of them I say would be Switzerland. I look at Lugano, and Canton Zug. Lugano, because they actually have de facto adopted Bitcoin as some sort of legal tender. I won't be able to get into the nitty gritty of the laws of what that means, but you go to Lugano and they have a lot of merchants that are accepting Bitcoin. And that's fantastic. This isn't Lugano. This is the third biggest financial service sector in city in Switzerland, accepting Bitcoin in a country that probably has the least inflation in the world and has the highest GNP per capita in the whole world. So it's ridiculous that some country, well, it's not ridiculous. It actually is logical. They get it. They understand. And they understand that the future is Bitcoin. And then I look at Canton Zug. And Canton Zug is tax haven. They've taken more of a neutral approach. And they say, okay, anything goes, but obviously we will tax you for it at a very, very small amount. And as a result, I say millions, thousands of businesses, especially hedge funds and some crypto style and some Bitcoin businesses, have moved to Zug. And now Canton Zug is flourishing because of its very relaxed tax laws. And I think the combination of those two, of Lugano, Zug, are going to be setting a precedent for the rest of Switzerland, as I am aware that Switzerland's, the cantons, can be very competitive with one another. And that's a beautiful thing. Their decentralized nature means that it's in their interest to see who has the better system. And because they have one of the only examples of direct democracy that actually works, that the reason why Switzerland is in the position in today is because of that direct democracy that hasn't broken yet. So I would presume that you will get Canton Bern and maybe Geneva at some point adhering to something similar to what's happening in Zug and Lugano. And then I think Zurich will be the last one, given the size and prominence in the traditional financial markets. But yeah, Switzerland, interesting case study there, given its wealthy status, stable status, and neutral status. Another country that I like to look at is the United Arab Emirates, and I believe the United Arab Emirates, very similar to kind of what Zug has done, is taking this tax haven approach and have a neutral approach and say, okay, everything goes here, obviously within reason, but they have allowed businesses to flourish, and now people are moving to United Arab Emirates, and businesses growing there. Also, the added benefit of United Arab Emirates is that they are an absolute monarchy, and their family is very much tied to the success of the future of the United Arab Emirates. So they have invested a lot of their money, time, and efforts to making sure that their country is successful, not just in the next 5 years or 6 years or whatever it is, like a typical democratic election cycle, but for the next 50, 100, 150 years. And this is something that you won't read much in the news. You will read stories about, oh yeah, they overbuilt stuff, they overbuilt buildings, they have too many office spaces that there are for businesses and stuff. But no, I hear stories from locals that Dubai is doing pretty well, and they are looking to be set in the right direction for the next sort of 50 to 100 years. And countries in the West would be incredibly envious. Your Netherlands, your Belgiums, your UKs, your Swedens, your Norways and stuff. They would be very envious of what is happening in United Arab Emirates. United Arab Emirates is not perfect. I think they've maybe embraced too much the whole feminism culture, because as a result, too many women. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that feminism is a bad thing. I think there's parts of feminism that will work, but we understand where feminism's true cause is, and that is trying to get more people into the workforce and trying to get kids into schools so they can be indoctrinated. Well, I have news for UAE, and sadly that their birth rate has gone down to about 1.47. And that is not replacing their culture. But I'm sure the royal family are going to pick up on this, and they will start to maybe incentivize women to stay home and do what they do best. And that's the most important job in life, the most fulfilling job in life. And that is to be raising families and raising the next generations and educating them. And coupling this with the ability to save in something like Bitcoin, gold even as well, I would be an advocate of, but obviously Bitcoin far superior, that these families will be able to do this, and you will see their birth rate go back up to the ideal 2.1, which replaces and grows populations.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast just got the first ever sponsor. I just started the podcast out like 3 months ago, and now we have 21 Bitcoin as a partner for this podcast. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. There are so many things in there what you just said. Like the first with El Salvador, I just spoke like a week ago with a couple that moved 2 years ago to El Salvador. And they told me that when they first got to there, most shop owners had like guards in front of their shops. And most of their guards are now gone because they don't need it anymore. Like some still have it, like in the country got so much safer. And also Switzerland having is a really funny state because, as you said, it's like the lowest inflation. They have a really sound financial system compared to all the other countries, and still they get Bitcoin. And it's just because of that, I think, because they're getting the financial system and they know how to handle it, that they are getting Bitcoin. And then we are getting back to all the values, and it's kind of all connected, like the security of the state, the sound financial system, the traditional family values. Because if we don't have the traditional family values, we die out at some point.
Yes.
If we don't
Well,
get
the West is dying, I'm afraid to say, and I'm have to say that it's worse in some parts than other. I consider maybe the Balkans as part of the West because I mean, if you have to draw a line somewhere, but they have been sucked. Their demographics has been sucked dry from the actual West because we have high quality labor, we have educated people, and when these guys, when Serbs, when Macedonians, Slovenians less so, their country's a bit much more stable. But Croatians, Bosnians, when they get educated, they just want to move abroad, and that's just making the situation worse.
yeah.
My job as well. Sorry to interrupt you, but my job is mission as well back in Serbia is my wife and I were opening up a foundation, which is the Hereditary Prince Filip and Princesa Danica Foundation, Royal Foundation. And one of the things that we'll be working on is trying to reverse this brain drain and trying to get people to stay here and to create opportunities where jobs are created and people won't have the need to leave. And actually, we want to have a reverse and have a net in migration. So yeah, it's a tall order, but we've got to start somewhere.
That's a great mission, I think. And if we summarize everything we just said, like maybe in the last 10 minutes, and we are coming to the conclusion that like Bitcoin is a really good idea, and there are already examples in nations like El Salvador and Switzerland where it's like kind of implemented and it goes really well. What's holding most nation states back from adopting Bitcoin? Like what's the thing that has to happen in the next like 50 years for nations to adopt Bitcoin?
It's a very, very good question. I think fear, doubt, and uncertainty. I think, the world, you saw what happened during COVID when most of the countries in the world acted in lockstep. When they started locking down economies, telling people to wear masks, and then asking them to stupidly get vaccinated was something that's experimental. That is what we're up against. And there are forces out there, and people say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. There's no such thing as a cabal, people controlling the world. Well, no, actually, it's just pure logic. Of course, there's a group of small individuals who own a load of the world's wealth, who will meet together to try and act in their own best interest. That's what's holding back pure adoption. That's what's holding back adoption for countries to make the decision to say, yeah, let's make it our legal currency. I mean, our legal tender and stuff. But I don't think that's really a problem for Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin, we at Jan 3 understand that Bitcoin is a bottom-up I say revolution, I say bottom-up strategy. It's a grassroots strategy. You can't stop it from growing. It's completely decentralized. It's like the mycelium of the forest. It's just going to grow. You cut off one chunk, it's just going to grow even stronger somewhere else. You saw that with the case study of China banning its mining, which was a fantastic thing. Next thing you know, mining became even more decentralized. It's the 10-headed beast that you cut off one head and 20 more heads come out. It's fantastic. Well, I think countries, smaller countries, more agile countries, and not your big G7 or G20 or whatever GPAC countries are the ones they're not going to be the ones adopting Bitcoin in any shape or form. They might be using it here and there. They might be accepting it to some extent there and here, but the ones who properly adopt it are the ones are the smaller countries who have been hard done by trade situations and capital controls and been hard done by the dollar. So I'm looking mainly towards Latin America. We were recently, Samson and Ben were recently in Suriname. They have bad inflation there. It's in the 50-60%. But there are politicians there. There's groups of politicians there who are waking up to the fact that Bitcoin can help save their situation. They're an energy-rich country, and maybe they can work something with mining Bitcoin. But also, there's maybe talk about them trying to put buy 1 or 2% of their reserves on with Bitcoin. We're seeing interests of other countries around El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, El Salvador, Panama. We're seeing these countries looking at El Salvador as thinking, yeah, we kind of want to sort of see that happening within our borders too. But the problem is that those countries have different governance models, and with different governance models comes different strategies. So I don't think you'll get a Bukele anytime soon. And a Bukele it's an outlier in terms of, he's an outlier in terms of what he did and how he did it, and if it will ever be replicated. I think you'll have more process. You'll have the more democratic. I'm not saying that El Salvador is not democratic. It is. It just happens that he has 90% approval, so people perceive him as a dictatorship. But whatever, he has 90% approval and he's doing good for the country. But say for example, like somewhere like Costa Rica, where they say they have one of the most developed democracies in the world, comparable to Switzerland, then you got to say, all right, well that's that's going to be an absolute challenge. How many hoops and sort of hoops and boundaries you have to go through in order for Bitcoin to happen. So I think the smaller countries. So I'm going back to saying the smaller countries that have some sort of energy ability to use energy to mine Bitcoin. I think that's going to be one of the causes for adoption. I think that that given that energy is the most important sector in the world. I mean, without energy, nothing really works. And right now, energy is under a 51% attack, I would say, thanks to globalist policy ideology of this climate scam. So I think that there will be a pushback from rational people like Bitcoiners who understand that you can actually use Bitcoin. And this is also proven right by papers written by the big four accounting companies, namely KPMG, proving that Bitcoin is one of the ultimate ESG assets and tools that we have out there, and can actually help the climate. Not that the climate actually needs helping, but that's another conversation. But I think that energy is going to play a big part in countries adopting Bitcoin in some shape or form. You saw what happened in the Kingdom of Oman. I think it's Oman. Excuse me if no, not Bahrain, it's Oman. Kingdom of Oman recently, at end of summer last year, or was around May or June last year, they actually have invested 1.1 billion into mining Bitcoin. because they're energy rich and they realize that money is energy. And so they're starting to connect the dots. And now that's sort of those investments, small countries like that have some sort of energy, who want to be independent, will start to move into Bitcoin in that sort of way of form. So I'm going to ramble on and say that, for example, here in Serbia, and within the region, my ideal strategy over here was that I don't see that Bitcoin as a currency taking off quite yet. People here are a little bit too skeptical of Bitcoin. They associate too much of something digital, even though it's not really digital. It's actually more electronic. But they see it maybe something like as control, like a CBDC, and it's going to take away your freedom and all that. And they are very cash orientated, and they're very much about their hoarding cash under their mattresses. But they don't. Then they realize that cash has been eroded at 10% inflation every year, and it's only going to get worse. But for example, Serbia has incredible capacity for geothermal energy, and thanks to Bitcoin, its capacity is not very easily accessible. It requires a lot of investment. But thanks to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin mining, could actually reduce the time and the effort and the cost of actually extracting that energy and providing it to the millions of homes that are needed to be heated over winter and be cooled over summer in Serbia, and therefore gaining energy independence from the likes of Russia, which we have great relationships with Russia, but that's under threat thanks to certain current geopolitical dynamics. But wouldn't it be great if Serbia just decides, okay, let's focus on our geothermal capacity. Let's start drilling some holes here and there, and if these don't actually destroy the environment. And now we have hot water springs, because we have so many hot water springs, that these hot water springs can now be bringing hot water to heat homes all in some areas, and then that hot water can be used to create energy that can mine Bitcoin, that will then make money to then pay for roads and for services, and then we can lower people's taxes and then improve the people's cost of living, and all of a sudden energy prices go down year over year, and then people will come over because of the stability and the investing into the country. It's just a multiplier effect. It just makes so much sense, but it just takes a bit of time and understanding. So I think education is another big part of it. As I said before, fear, doubt, and uncertainty, and I think that fear is a big thing. The fear of the unknown. The internet in the early 90s was a big fear for a lot of people. I got to say, I'll admit, I was young, but I was like, what is this stuff? What is this internet stuff? There's books, there's TV, there's radio, but then look what happens. Look what happened to the internet. It's incredible. So I think there will be an inflection point when people will start to understand that that Bitcoin is that base layer of money, and there's so much stuff that can be done, so much utility that can be done on top of it through different layers and through mining and through what just Bitcoin does. That's going to change the world for the better.
Yeah, true. It's basically just a matter of time till people and nation states and institutions and everybody involved figures out what Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin can help on an individual level, on a nation state level, on an institutional level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's crazy how far we already got, with a founder of Bitcoin going away after 1 year, basically, and saying, "Yeah, let's let it live on, and it's good enough already." And now public companies have adopted it, nation states adopting it. It's getting legal tender status. It's crazy, and I think it's a really good thing to be involved in. And maybe coming back to Jan 3 and nation state adoption, like we covered already a lot of countries now, but I see you and Samson Mao and other people from Gen 3 going a lot on to a lot of different countries, meeting with people, meeting with presidents. What's the current state of nation states? What could be the next nations that adopt Bitcoin on a legal tender basis? What's the current outlook right now?
The current outlook is, look, it's not, I wouldn't say it's hot, but it's going, with the coming bull market, then it will speed up. We have conversations. We saw us in Suriname and Colombia. We were also recently in Montenegro. So I think you'll start to see some nation states making moves into Bitcoin in different shapes and forms, as we talked about before. And I think namely energy, but also maybe allocating some of their reserves into Bitcoin, and to the point of actually accepting it as legal tender. I can't disclose what's because I don't have the information. I don't have the crystal ball, but I would just say that I think later this year you should see some nation states making some, I say bold because that's how, let's say, the mainstream will call it. But I'd say, but also bold in our world as well, because it is still a risk at some respect that, if you're a first mover, you are still taking some risk, but they will be rewarded. They will be handsomely rewarded. These will be strong, bold moves, just like Bukele has done. And how Michael Saylor did with in the corporate world. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of activity in the second half of this year and then going into next year. And we have more meetings with more countries later this year. And for example, Montenegro, we have speaking to a couple of very intelligent Montenegrin Bitcoiners who have some great plans lined up there. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. I don't want to burst everyone's bubble and say, yeah, it's going to happen. All countries are going to start piling into it. There's going to be a big rush to global adoption and stuff. No, but it will happen bit by bit. And that's the old saying is gradually, then suddenly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how do you see if like more and more countries now adopting Bitcoin and like for me personally, I adopted a full Bitcoin standard. I still have to pay most things in fiat currency because it's not otherwise possible. But I always try to be at like zero fiat. And if more and more people do that, and if more and more even nation states starting to do that, and we're having like if we take 1971 as like the complete beginning of the fiat standard, of course it was there before, but then 1971 it really like kind of took off the fiat standard. It already survived more than 50 years. How long can this fiat system still survive? Will it always survive? Can it survive another 50, 100 years?
Well, as you're seeing right now, for its survival to happen, it seems to be that the depth is just only going to get greater and greater. So can it be paid? Can this debt ever be paid off? No, it won't be paid off. So there has to be some bubble that will pop. I mean, some bubble. That bubble will have to somehow come down and be popped. And I don't see it's mathematically possible to repay that debt, because that debt is just getting worse and worse. Then you have to ask the question: so who would then take the role as global reserve asset? And this is people have been talking about BRIC countries. Maybe one of those countries standing out and saying, "Yes, I'll be that global reserve." But I don't think any one of those countries want to be global reserve. I think they might want to have more dominance with their currency. But you have to remember that a global reserve currency has to also print money and to export money. So they will have to then also become a net importer of goods in order to balance those trade. This is known as the Griffin. I forget it was Peruvian Bull who taught me this. He's a great account to listen to, and I heard him on a podcast saying that the Griffin dilemma. Griffin dilemma is that you would have to print. You'd have to, if you're a net exporter of goods, like most of these BRIC countries are: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They export more than they import. But then, if you become a reserve currency, you will have to start exporting your currency. So in order to stop runaway inflation, you will then have to start importing more goods than you are exporting. So I don't see those countries starting to import more goods. So that's the dilemma. This is what America was able to pull off for many years. is that they are a consumption country and they can consume more than they actually consume more than they export to some extent. So they're able to balance that. Not to say that it was perfect, but they're now running away from that dilemma is catching up with them. So then the BRICS would consider them maybe putting together a basket of currencies or maybe commodities together for money to be backed by that. But I think over time, trust is the issue over here. Is like, BRIC countries are BRIC countries. They've got big economies, growing economies, but let's say that politics in those countries is always unstable. So trust is always going to be an issue. And so if trust is an issue, what is there out there that doesn't need trust? That's trustless, and you can verify. Then that's Bitcoin. So I think there will be a point where those bigger of the BRIC style countries and your Turkeys and your Argentinas and people like that will then realize, okay, well, actually, yeah, I think it's about time that we join this trustless system. And yeah, so I'm very bullish about Bitcoin and in the very long term. So yeah.
Okay, game theory is definitely starting to come along and take.
It's gonna come very suddenly, but right now it's very gradually. So I mean, what we do at Jan 3 is we go and plant seeds around the place, and we go try and get introductions to governments around the world. We've spoken to a lot of politicians, leaders, even just influential people, and just try to orange pill them. And people get it. I say people get it. Some people don't get it. But planting that seed of education, and I think there will be a point, and I think that given how the world works under political cycles, and right now we're sort of at the end of a massive geopolitical cycle, I think there will be an inflection point where something massive takes off. Maybe when in the terms of the BRICS trying to organize together with some global reserve currency backed by some commodities, or one of them wanting to, maybe China saying, no, I want to take the stand over here, but I doubt that's going to happen. But then there will be a movement towards Bitcoin afterwards. I'm being very optimistic and very idealistic, but I think that we're only a matter of a few years away from that. And also, given that also people are living right now through some of the worst inflation, cost of living crises in living memory since the 1970s. This is something that's not just experienced in countries like Venezuela, Lebanon, and other high inflation countries, Turkey and places like that. But I think that other countries who have had now experienced double-digit inflations, UK, Serbia included, America was almost up there, but I believe it was up there. It's just the way they manipulate their statistics. That now people are suffering, people are hurting, and so that and education of Bitcoin is going to move very quickly.
I think that's a great point to come to our end routine, that Bitcoin will move and Bitcoin will have a full-fledged adoption in like the near and long-term future, for everybody that is on a low time preference Bitcoin standard. I think it will pay off heavily. And we are having an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And there's an interesting one, I think, a question that a lot of people with a short time horizon usually think about. I don't care about the question too much, but I still want to ask it because it comes from the previous guest. Mm-hmm. When can we see a $100K Bitcoin price? The 100K question. I mean, you are in contact a lot with Samson Mao, who thinks
I think the question should be when we'll see 1 million Bitcoin.
Yeah, we can remodel the question for 1 million.
No, I think 100K. I think 100K is a lot closer than we think. Yes, so I think by the end of the year, let's say. I say by October. I'm going to put a date there. I'm not into this. I'm not into that, playing that anymore. That's what I used to do back in the days when I was an shitcoin altcoiner. But I'm going to say October 2024. We'll see 100K.
Yeah, I also think it's really difficult for Bitcoin not to hit 100K this year. But,
yeah, of course.
But also, I'm really young with 25, so I actually want Bitcoin to stay as low as possible for as long as possible because I want to stake more Bitcoin.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
But just looking out for my personal things. Where can people find you, get in touch with you? Is there anything you want to add to what we discussed today?
People can get in touch with the Jan 3. I mean, you can post it on or when you release this on your post. Yeah. But I'm my Twitter handle is Prince Philip 1. That's PRINC FILIP 1. And then we have jan3com.com. I forget. But anyway, you can write it down. And also have Instagram, and Jan3 has Instagram as well, but Twitter's better.
Yeah, Twitter's the main source.
And just also another thing is come to Serbia. There's I didn't really speak much about Serbia. Is come to Serbia. We have a growing Bitcoin scene out here. We have a hub that was just opened up. End of last year, the year before last, and it's now turned into a non-profit. And we have fantastic maxis working in there, and it's already paying off. We have a lot of projects happening there. We have some events, meetups, somewhere for a place for education, for socials, and the location is in downtown Belgrade. It's a very, 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 very good location, and you can go. It's called 21, and the hub is called Hub 21, and it's a great place to meet Serbian Bitcoiners, but also for traveling Bitcoiners to get together and for a workspace as well. So yeah, visit Serbia.
That's great. Are there any Bitcoin conferences happening in Serbia? Do you know about any?
No, there's no. There's shitcoin conferences. Like there's. I was invited to some meta bullshit conference, and I think there was some Solana one the other day last year and stuff. Obviously, you're not going to see me at those, but I think it's about time that we have a Bitcoin only conference.
Yes, yeah. We need those in every country to happen. I was in Prague last year, and it was amazing because it was so close to me. And yeah, I want to see more Bitcoin only conferences around Austria, Germany, Serbia, all of Europe. Basically, it would be amazing to find more.
I just want to have ones to invite locals to understand and learn more about what Bitcoin is, and to try and squash those misconceptions that really are still holding a lot of people back from understanding what Bitcoin is. But also there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of how to actually buy and acquire and hold Bitcoin. We have Binance, we have Kraken, we have ECD, which is an exchange run by a good friend of mine here. But it's always the quest of trying to make user experience easier and knowledge better, so people are able to get onto the Bitcoin standard and able to protect their hard-earned money in the easiest, safest, best way possible for their circumstances. So yeah, that's the quest. That's what Bitcoiners have to do.
That's why we are here for. Thank you for being on, and I'm already looking forward to what's next for Gen 3 and you.
Robin, it's an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to seeing you.